The gospel is about learning and growing and changing. Education is about learning and changing. So the essence of the gospel of Jesus Christ is pressing forward to learn more, to become better. Not just in and of ourselves, but with help from God.
Hello, my name is Spencer Bell, and along with my partners Olga Nazeva and Chris Bodine, we are going to give you a presentation on the well-known virus HIV. HIV is a disease that has garnered attention from all over the world because of its effects and rapid spread. It is a more recent disease than others that have been recognized for centuries and studied. Its first recognized appearance in the media was in the 1980s in a group of 5 homosexual men who developed a rare lung infection despite having no previous health problems. More and more cases began popping up of unusual infections and cancers in homosexual men. As time passed, it was found to be primarily in people who had sexual contact in one form or another. It was then dubbed AIDS, and it was found to be caused by a retrovirus called HIV. Then, in the 1990s, cases began to appear around the world and increase rapidly in number. As its presence in the world grew, policies, detection processes, and treatments were being developed to combat this new epidemic. An interesting correlation between this and the gospel is that this epidemic grew as the standards and morals of the world fell. HIV symptoms consist of headache, lethargy or fatigue, fever, and flu-like illness. It then goes into a period of remission and manifests again and causes more symptoms such as weight loss, memory loss, yeast infections, skin rashes, herpes infections, and finally AIDS, which is also known as acquired immune deficiency syndrome.
Hello class, my name is Olga and I will begin to present my part with telling about etiology and reservoir, and then we'll talk about treatment and we'll finish with prevention. The full name of the virus is Human Immunodeficiency Virus, or HIV. Human Immunodeficiency Virus is a lentivirus. The name of lentiviruses comes from a Latin word lente, which means slow. They've got this name because of a long incubation period. Lentiviruses, including HIV, are all from a family of retroviruses. There are 2 types of the virus, HIV-1 and HIV-2. HIV is an enveloped RNA virus, and I'll explain more about it with the next slide. Although HIV comes from a family of retroviruses, it is different in structure from other retroviruses. You can see on the picture it is of a spherical shape with a diameter of about 120 nanometers, which is 60 times less than a red blood cell. As I have mentioned before, HIV is an enveloped virus. It means that each particle has some kind of a shell or the viral envelope. The viral envelope of HIV is consisted of lipid bilayer and proteins. The viral envelope helps the virus to enter a host cell because they both have similar surface and they kind of stick together and merge. Inside the viral envelope, there's another shell called a capsid. The capsid is made of proteins and it has 2 copies of a single-stranded RNA genome inside. When the virus is inside an infected cell, it uses RNA to replicate and to make copies of itself. When inside a human body, HIV attacks humans' immune system, especially CD4 cells, or as they also call T cells. When the number of T cells in an organism becomes less than 200 in 1 microliter of blood, the immune system cannot fight off infections and diseases anymore. At that point, a person gets an acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, or AIDS. The next thing we will talk about is reservoir, or how the virus is carried. The source of HIV can be any infected person with any stage of the disease. HIV is anthroponomic, which means that a disease infectious agent is carried only by humans. HIV cannot be transmitted to animals, only to humans. So the virus is transmitted from humans to humans only. Inside a human body, in its latent condition, latent means inactive, the virus is found in macrophages and monocytes. Those are both kind of cells, and the reason why the virus tries to hide in those kind of cells is because it is more difficult for immune system to identify the virus inside those cells. And now there's some information about treatment and prevention. And first of all, there is no vaccination and no cure. HIV cannot be cured, but with special kind of a therapy, it can be well controlled. The most effective therapy for HIV today is called highly active antiretroviral therapy. This therapy includes 3 different drugs from 6 different classes of drugs. Sometimes it is called triple cocktail. This therapy is considered to be the most effective because taking specific medication regularly can extend one's life up to 70-80 years, and it can improve life quality as well. For example, infected women can have children. So what does the therapy exactly do? First, it reduces the amount of HIV in the body. Second, it protects the immune system. Third, it prevents HIV from advancing to AIDS. And finally, it reduces the risk of HIV transmission. Although this therapy can be much effective, it also has some disappointments. For example, patients must take all 3 medications every day at a specific time without skipping it, which makes it too many pills, and the schedule can be quite complicated. Recently, some pharmacological companies began to produce medications where 3 different drugs or components were combined into one pill. This made it easier for patients, and it reduced the number of pills to take. Another negative point about this therapy is that the drugs can have some side effects. For example, GI intolerance, skin rash, bleeding, insomnia, and others. The therapy itself is quite expensive. For example, in America, it costs more than $28,000 per patient per year. And at the end of my part, there's short information about prevention of HIV. The following practical methods can be used to prevent HIV infection and transmission. And first, it is avoiding unprotected sexual contact with an infected person. Then it is changing needles after each use. It is also HIV tests before blood transfusion and organ transplantation. And finally, it is treatment for those who are already infected.
Hello everyone, my name is Chris Bodine, and I will be explaining the transmission of HIV and how that has had an impact on the world as well as the United States. So there's a lot of misconceptions about how HIV is transmitted, and so I'd like to just take a second to address those misconceptions. One of the largest misconceptions is that HIV can be contracted through simple skin-to-skin contact. There's also the misconception that if you get somebody who's infected's blood or tears or sweat even on you, that you can be infected that way. This is not true, and we'll look more into that in the next slide. Also, there's a misconception that insects like mosquitoes, because they carry other viruses, can infect you with HIV. This isn't true because HIV does not survive well outside of a human host. The last misconception I'd like to address is that HIV can only be given through sexual relations, and that's not true because there are a lot of other ways that we can get HIV, though sexual relations is one of the largest ones. There's been a lot of research about where HIV can live within our bodies. And this research is very important to us because it helps us to know how it's transmitted. And then, like we looked at in the other slides, about how we can prevent and treat HIV. So the places in the body that HIV survives is within our bodily fluids, such as blood, semen, and even breast milk can have HIV living within it. And this is a large worldwide factor of mothers giving HIV to their children is through the breast milk. In order for the infected fluids to infect another person, it has to have a way to get into their body, and either through the mucous membrane, through damaged tissue of some sort, or directly into their bloodstream. As this happens, then we can look at our previous knowledge and our knowledge about how viruses work and see that when an infected fluid comes in contact with a place that it can live, then the virus will then spread throughout the new host body. HIV is found mostly in Western Africa, but there's a lot of cases of HIV in the United States. And if we look at the chart there on our right, we see that sexual male-to-male contact is the greatest risk of HIV in the United States, far outweighing heterosexual relationships. The last slide here simply gives us a contrast between the United States and the rest of the world. We see that there's a great rise of people worldwide living with HIV since 2010. From 2000 to 2016, it has gone up by almost 10 million people, and that's pretty incredible that it's still rising at that rate. However, we also see that the people being treated for HIV, which we see in the blue numbers there, has gone up by almost 19 million, which is another pretty incredible statistic. It seemed odd to me that there was a higher rise in people being treated than there were people being infected. But this brings us some really good news, knowing that people that were once infected that did not have access to treatment, there's millions more now that have access to the treatment for HIV all around the world. We also see in the United States that there is a reverse trend from the world, that the number of new cases of HIV is going down. We see in 2014 there were fewer cases than in 2008. So in that span of about 6 years, we see that the number of new cases in HIV has gone down by about 10,000. Also, one of the big factors to this is that the United States is the largest contributor to HIV research, which may help to explain the trends that we're seeing in the transmission of HIV. So there's a lot of different ways that HIV can be transmitted, but as we looked at our previous slides, there is treatment and there is prevention, and that's it. Thank you everyone for watching our video presentation about HIV. I know that Spencer, Olga, and I really appreciate the opportunity to learn and share this information with you. We hope that you were all able to learn a lot about the human immunodeficiency virus, and we were glad to share the history, signs and symptoms, as well as the etiology, treatment, transmission, and how to prevent HIV. Thank you everyone for watching, and we hope you really enjoyed it.